But this idea of presentism is very popular and gaining popularity of talking bad about our past. The definition was they interpret past events in terms of modern values and concepts. But I would wager that it's gone from interpreting to suppressing, and now we're right on the edge of erasing past events in terms of modern values and concepts.
The most beautiful parts of of living here and of being here are not found in state capitals,
Right.
and not found in national capitals. All those buildings are beautiful, and they represent a lot of good history and stuff like that. And there's some bad history too, but it's like, but I'm just saying that is what some people did. That's not the essence of the thing.
Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance. All right, welcome back to the Life of Faith podcast. This episode is kind of a fun one too. We're going to discuss America and Independence Day.
America.
So I guess that this will be coming out shortly before Independence Day. So to all of our listeners, I that just came out the way it came out. I didn't even mean that as a dig. Yeah, I don't know. You can cut that out, I guess, if you want, or we can leave it in there. Whatever.
Independence Day.
Yep. So Independence Day, we wish you all, our listeners, a happy Independence Day. I'll just kind of use this as kind of the introductory to the discussion we're going to have here today. On this day in 1776, the Continental Congress adopts our Declaration of Independence, and it had already resolved on July 2nd that, quote, these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. Now it formally adopted a written document about those things as well. It took nearly a month to write the Declaration. You may know that Thomas Jefferson was the primary author, but he had help too. On June 11th, Congress nominated a committee of 5. I guess that was maybe about a week and a half ago from the point that we're recording this. There was a committee of 5 to draft a declaration. This committee did not leave a written record of its deliberations. Instead, the accounts we have were written many years later when memories had faded. Many of them were conflicting. We may never know exactly how our declaration was drafted, but we can get a general idea of the series of events. The committee apparently started by holding several meetings in which it created a high-level outline of what the document should say. Then, according to John Adams' later recollection of the Committee of 5, appointed a subcommittee of Adams and Jefferson. Adams declined to draft the document. Jefferson remembered it a bit differently. He remembered it being appointed directly by the committee. Diary entries and such partially support both men's recollections and partially contradict both men's recollections. And so what must it have been like to stand in front of the Pennsylvania State House on that day in 1776, hearing the closing lines of our Declaration? We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, amen, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and for the support of this declaration with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. So that's how everything got started. And I wanted to start with that because it was really a great time for our country. It was also the beginning of some bad times because it was basically the Declaration of Independence, sparked a lot of other things going on as far as war and all that. So they were able to have the Revolutionary War, and then they were able to get all that decided. But there was a lot there's a lot of blood that was poured out just for the preserving all of that and keeping it intact to help our nation to really be birthed and then to grow into what it is today. which brings me to kind of more of the centerpiece of this conversation. Dan, what do you think of America today?
I think it's the coolest thing. I love it, and I care more about it now than I ever did. And I think it's just like it's the land of opportunity. I mean, in no other place could you make a living the way you can here. And I'm super optimistic about it, and I know it's like I know we have a lot of challenges, but I think so do many other countries, and the challenges that we face are not as are there. I don't want to say they're not difficult, but we just don't have some of the same problems that other places do. You know what I mean? Like I say it a lot, but we don't face violence yet against us for speaking our faith in public, and that's a big thing. And we have, like I say, we have challenges and stuff, but those challenges are not America, right? I mean, it's like you can't really look at the worst parts of the country and say that's what America is, without looking at the best parts of it. You know what I mean? You judge us on our wins, right? Everybody wants to be judged by where they were at the top, not where they were at the bottom.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's like I don't think our problems are any different than they ever have been. Really, it's just that they're different. They're different in look, but it all comes back to the same things, right? We've talked about in our we've talked about in the podcast before about elevating the opinion of man over the opinion of the Lord, right?
Yeah.
That's a problem as old as time itself, right? Mm-hmm. In the garden, it was like Satan's opinion, that really dictated the day, right? And it's like, and she just said, "We'll be as God, knowing good and evil."
Yeah.
It's
Are
like,
you sure God
are you sure
that?
God said that? Yeah. Well, this guy he makes a good point.
Yeah.
That's kind of how that began, right? And those problems are as old as time, but those are not exclusive to America. That's my point. Mm-hmm. But like,
and even today in America, it's like, did the founding fathers really mean that?
Yeah.
Like, you got the same thing happening.
But I mean, it's I'm maybe like to a fault optimistic, I guess. Maybe I just think there's a lot to be grateful for. I just try to take that perspective on most things. Even if like, I see all the same challenges. There are streets in my own city I don't want to go on when the sun goes down and stuff like that. We've had shootings, like we've had. There's a big drug problem and stuff like that where we're from, and and that was kind of the same thing when I was a kid, except when I was a kid it was different drugs, but it was the same, same problems.
Yep, same problems. Yeah, no, I appreciate the optimism you bring to this discussion because I think it's important. I think you should both be thankful for the country that God has given us and the opportunities we still have. Be thankful for everything that you have, the freedoms. And don't take it for granted, right? Don't take it lightly. There's warring opinions in today's culture, whereas I was going to say we have the same problems today, but we may have like a little bit more division than we have had in recent history. And I say recent because there was a point in time where we had a civil war. I don't think you can say we've never been more divided as a country than that time, right?
Yeah, there's that comedian who's like, I forget who it is, but he's like, we fought a war against each other, right?
Make it happen again. Yeah. So I don't think it's at that point. I know people are saying that we're headed there, but I also think that we live in a softer society too. So I don't know. I think a civil war today would be fought much different than it was fought back then, and just because of the advancements in technology too. Some people would say a little bit of the warring ideals is being silenced or banned on social media. Thankfully, here at the Life and Faith podcast, we're not on anybody's radar yet, but if we ever were to be, at least for the right reasons, right? Because Jesus said in the um, Sermon on the Mount, he said, "If you suffer for righteousness' sake, happy are ye."
Yeah, yeah.
And I would hope it would be for a righteous reason and not for my own he said, even he doubled down on that to say, if it's for my sake, I want it to be for his sake, not because I said something stupid on here or something that was hateful, like, which hateful is probably the wrong word to use there because everybody defines that differently in today's day and age. But all that to say, I still believe that America is an absolutely exceptional country. Still is to this day. You can't get the freedoms, the liberties that we have anywhere else. There's a lot of arguments against that, and I understand that. But I think a lot of the arguments actually come from this idea of presentism. Have you ever heard of presentism, Dan?
No.
I hadn't either before. I've heard of the definition, but I haven't heard it defined as this word. So, presentism is defined in the Oxford Dictionary as the following: the uncritical adherence to present-day attitudes, especially the tendency to interpret past events in terms of modern values and concepts. This idea, this way of thinking is so popular right now. It is, if you want to be trendy or have a seat at the table of a modern day discussion with a group of friends, or even just, hey, you're going out for whatever, you're going out for a night on the town or something like that, and you want to be socially acceptable in your conversation, you need to point out all the problems in America. You need to point out, well, look at what we did historically speaking. Look at this, like we did this and we failed here and all that, and we're America's built on the backs of these oppressed minorities and stuff like that. That is so trendy, and I know a lot of people that say, well, we need to bravely say that kind of stuff. Well, there's nothing brave necessarily about saying what's acceptable by society. That's not bravery.
Mm-hmm.
Bravery is speaking against what society typically says and speaking a different viewpoint. But it absolutely, like, you see that played out, this idea of presentism played out in, like, destroying monuments, tearing down things. Like, yeah, maybe somebody wasn't perfect, but neither were the founding fathers, and neither are you and I. We're not perfect either. Look, I mean, for the audience that we're speaking to as Christians, you probably are familiar with the Bible and the people that were documented in the Bible. Some of the heroes of the Bible, quote unquote, they were very flawed people too. All of them were very flawed people, and that's what's so unique about the way the Bible is written, is it shows their lives, warts and all, and yet we don't throw everything they set out just because of mistakes that they made. But this idea of presentism is very popular and gaining popularity, of talking bad about our past. It's gone from interpreting, the definition was they interpret past events in terms of modern values and concepts. But I would wager that it's gone from interpreting to suppressing, and now we're right on the edge of erasing past events in terms of modern values and concepts. We don't like this so much, we need to erase it. And a lot of, like, you ask Christian school teachers, or not Christian school, public school teachers, and their curriculums that the government mandates doesn't even cover half of what actually happened in the history, which is sad. And that's, what is the old quote about those who don't learn from history?
Yeah, are doomed to repeat it.
Doomed to repeat it. Well, how can you learn if it's not even there to learn from, right? So that's kind of a little bit. What do you have any points to add to that, Dan?
Yeah, I would say, like, the bad things that have happened in the past are not. Those are just some things that some people did. They're not America, right, in that way, right? It's like I said, you don't want to be judged by your lowest point. You want to be judged by your highest point. And I think if you take a road trip and you see, like, parts of, the Upper Peninsula and there's moments where even in our own county, there's places where you can look and see America. That's it. That's what it is. We're not the actions of our government, and we're not the actions of the citizens. You know what I mean? It's a place for something so much better than what is available elsewhere. It's like I think that about that a lot when we talk about like world affairs, like the war that's going on over in between Russia and Ukraine. It's like, are the Ukrainians these people? Are the Russians those people, or is that their government?
Yeah.
Like, would you like to be considered for the actions of our government?
No. Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't equate what they do. Like, if you were from Canada and you knew nothing about America other than what the government does, and you came here and somebody said, like, see what they do? And it's like, that has nothing to do with me, man.
Unfortunately, our nation's representatives do not actually represent the people.
Yeah,
anymore.
And I think about that a lot.
Yeah.
Like, the most beautiful parts of of living here and of being here are not found in state capitals,
right,
and not found in national capitals. All those buildings are beautiful, and they represent a lot of good history and stuff like that. And there's some bad history too, but it's like, but I'm just saying that is what some people did. That's not the essence of the thing.
Yeah. Imagine attaching your identity so much to a nation. Like, I think I'm not speaking out against patriotism. I think there's nothing wrong with patriotism, but for us Christians, your identity should be in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And
or is.
Yeah.
It is in Christ.
It is in Christ, but it's your perception is what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if we think about how the nation was founded upon Christian principles and biblical principles, then there's a little bit of that we can attach our identity to, but anything apart from that, it doesn't have to be there. And when you think of American exceptionalism, it's that we are exceptional in so many areas. I'd like to kind of cover in this topic what a lot of people's problems are with America, or some of the criticisms they have. So I'm just curious, Dan, is there any criticism off the top of your head that a lot of people make about America?
Well, I guess it would be that we're racists.
Yeah, I hear that term thrown
that
around a lot.
That we're fat.
What does racist even mean anymore?
Yeah. That we're fat. That we are dumb. That self-seeking, maybe.
And
I guess
this is criticisms coming from within, right?
Oh well, I mean, I don't know.
I know I've heard it from without, but also, people even within the country.
That we're not really fair to the less fortunate. That we hold the less fortunate down. That we have we don't give equal opportunity to people. I'm trying to think of some other ones.
I know a lot of people will say
that we're wealthy
we don't have good health care here.
Don't have good health care. Yep. That we're wealthy and don't use it to our advantage. Don't use it in the right way, or we're not good with it. You know what I mean? Like we don't use our powers for good.
Yeah. Which is interesting because our country was monumental in the removal of the tyranny of the world twice, not once, twice.
2-time champs, back to back.
But again, it's what you said earlier as far as you were saying. People remember you for the faults instead of the big picture of what you've actually accomplished.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want to be remembered for the positives, right?
Yeah, if that goes for people, it goes for countries too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just the way it is. You make mistakes and things like that, but I'm not trying to say that the terrible things that that have happened here in this country are somehow equivalent to the little things that people do. They're much bigger, much more grand than that, but and I'm not belittling any of that suffering or anything. I'm just saying that is not representative of what we stand for. You know what I mean? That's
Yep.
so silly to even suggest that. Because like I say, you take like a road trip. Drive around. It's like look around. It's a beautiful place. You know, like we talked about in a previous episode about somebody being able to make a living recording their stupid face on their stupid laptop. And it's like that. Where else could you get that? You know what I mean? You just couldn't have that freedom. I think about that a lot when I see American fighters fly flags from other countries. Like say they're from some other country. I won't even say one so as not to appear racist. But say they're from Sweden or something, or they're Swedish or something. I'll just say Sweden because it's like Sweden is non-committal. But like they'll be from America and they'll fly that flag, and it's like,
Dan, nobody knows actually what your race is.
well, yeah, I know, yeah, right.
Unless they know us personally, I guess.
But like they'll do that, and then it's like, well, go to that country and see what kind of Premier League they could build. You couldn't do that.
Yeah.
They couldn't and didn't.
Yep.
We did, and you came here. Let's have a little bit of respect for what was possible in this place.
Nowhere else in the world, nowhere could you go into a country and chant death to that country and have nothing happen to you.
Maybe Canada. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. Like, you could chant some other things that I know would get you in jail in Canada.
Yeah.
But, yeah, maybe not that one. But, yeah. Yeah, it's a very unique country in the sense that you don't really have freedom of religion like we have here. You don't. And many people would say, well, that's part of the problem. Well, you can't have it both ways, really. Like, you need to have a freedom of religion in order to preserve anyone's religion. And other countries don't have that. You cannot. There's certain things that you can't say, certain things you can't do. And as far as the healthcare thing, I hear a lot of criticism about that. I think a lot of it comes from just being very uninformed, because they base it off of comparing other countries that have free healthcare. But obviously, healthcare that is free is only divvied out to whoever the government. If the government owns your healthcare, then they get to say when and how long it takes to get certain things, or if you can get treatment for certain things. And people have died in other countries because the government, even though the person wasn't paying for their healthcare, the government was doing it, and the government said, well, we don't see this as a wise expenditure of saving this person's life, because people become like cattle. Right?
Yeah, referring to it as not that you are, but I'm just making the point that referring to it as free healthcare is a misnomer.
Right. There's always
the question is, what happens to the result of your labor? Who owns the fruits of your labor?
Yeah.
If you create and someone takes from you, that's not free. Right? It's not free healthcare. It's healthcare it's sponsored by someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's government sponsored healthcare.
Yeah.
That's
the free healthcare thing is more like a marketing.
Yeah.
Like
it's
political.
It's bad
jargon.
market. Yeah, it's good marketing depending on what side you're on. But
yeah.
It's like it's just bad.
They've
marketing.
convinced a lot of people. So objectively, you could say they've done a good job of marketing it because they've convinced people.
The idea that that's another thing that again is not America, but as a criticism, it's like people want to make other people think that the impossible is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
It's like someone will grow up literally believing they could never have health insurance, right? Yeah. They could never have health care because that's what rich people have, and I'm never going to be rich. And it's like, my man, that stuff is so within your grasp. It's not a question. I would just give everybody the kind of belief in themselves that would help them understand that they could achieve the thing that they don't think is possible. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that's sort of what America is about.
Yeah, a lot of people will argue that because in America you don't have a right, a lot of people think you should have a right to free healthcare and treatments and all that kind of stuff. And while there's a lot of directions you can go with this, because one direction I'd like to go to, but it's not really for this episode, is um, the church has really lost its way in being compassionate and helping people. Um,
Mm. Well, I will tell you this though. I don't want to interrupt you,
sure,
but I'm gonna.
go ahead.
But what I was gonna say is the reason is because there's a boot on every one of their throats, and if there wasn't a boot on their throats, I think you would see
A boot on whose
on the
throat?
throat of the congregants of every church.
Oh, I see.
And in every religion, we all walk around with a boot on our throat. And so to say that they wouldn't do it or that they've lost their way, yeah, they haven't. They're not doing it
Mm-hmm.
because the government took over for them.
True. Yeah.
And the
there you go.
government also says,
And most people today, they'd much rather lick the boot of the government. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that you would ever lick the boot of. That's just the way they view it. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to lick one of the boots, so I'm going to lick the government.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it would. I think if they weren't being taxed to death at like unconscionable rates, then you would see a lot more. Like, I know churches have done like what are they called? Community health plan things.
Yeah,
where they,
the MetaShare.
co-op.
MetaShare is one of them.
Yeah, co-op health plans where they.
Life and Faith podcast is not sponsored by MetaShare.
They've done that. I think it's the same thing with schooling, right? We've talked about schooling ad nauseum, but they would take, if they have it within their means, they would, I believe, take that on. You know what I mean? Not to diminish what you were saying, but
A real church, right? A real church would do those things. A big problem is you've got a lot of churches posing as churches that aren't really. It's not filled with people who are genuine believers. Just going through the motions, unfortunately. Another aspect of that, though, is I do want to point out that in the first century church, after Pentecost and people were filled with the Holy Spirit and they started adding to the church daily, they did do that, and they were under heavy criminal taxation levels from the Roman Empire. But they still took care of people, and it was just because you had people filled with the Spirit, and they were doing church the way it was intended to be done. And I think there's so much tradition that people are caught up in today that it detracts from what is the church really there for. And let me be clear here, because I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. The church is not a what do you call it, like a humanitarian aid. I'm not saying that at all. The church is to carry out the gospel of Jesus Christ. The church is to glorify God. Those are the things that the church is there for. But in so doing, sometimes, like Jesus went and met people's physical needs and then told them a spiritual truth and basically gave them the gospel. And said, your faith has made you whole, or something like that. He acknowledged the faith element. But many times, just being able to support people, help people out, is a crucial thing that Christians can do in order to reach people. So there's that element of it. But essentially, people will rag on America all day about healthcare and stuff like that. The fact of the matter is, if you look up real data and not just like CNN talking points, you'll see that we actually are doing an exceptional job still to this day at that. Is the healthcare system flawed? Yes. Is there money involved in the pharmacies and all that kind of stuff? Absolutely. Like, that stuff is crazy. But comparatively, like you've said many times already on this episode, comparatively, it's still amazing compared to what other countries have to go through with healthcare situations. If you look even at medical innovations, we are still leading the way. If you look up right now on Google, like, who's leading the way in medical innovation, most sections will say America. I did find one section that said it's actually China now, that they barely surpassed us. But you got to look at China holistically. They way outnumber America, and their government basically tells people innovate, and they have to do it under threat of death, basically. So China is a completely different story. Another thing, too, is while the data may reflect that China is leading the way in that, they're not doing any, like, little to no trials. Do you know what that means? That means basically they're like, for a baseball analogy, they're like Mark McGwire cranking out stuff on steroids, and nobody's running a steroid test. Like, you don't know how effective it's actually being. that may be getting in the weeds a little bit there, but I just want to say, like, most places you look at are going to still show the United States is leading the way in health in medical innovation. And it's not even close. Um, and that's just one example. I give that example because that's way a lot of direction a lot of people go in, is they discredit America, and then the other direction a lot of people go in is to discredit our history and to say that we had slaves. Well, you know what? So did the rest of the world, and there's a shockingly amount of places in the world still today that still have slavery, and all over the world there's a rampant problem of human trafficking, which is slavery at its worst. And that's going on in America. That's going on in other places. It's just behind closed doors, right? So obviously that's illegal. But in some places it is legal still for human trafficking and slavery. Other countries got rid of slavery over the past couple hundred years. But it wasn't until after America made the precedent of abolishing slavery. And you know what America had to do? They had to fight in a civil war to and so think about that. Dan was talking about how you need to share the wins of a country, not just focus on the failures. The fact that our country fought a civil war to rid our country of slavery is amazing, and that's the total opposite of what you hear from a lot of the presentism that I was talking about earlier, and that is to criticize America for ever having slavery. And like I said earlier, I think it bears repeating. We were I would say undoubtedly that you can't really prove otherwise that America was the most influential country in ridding the world of tyranny in both world wars. And that you can't take that lightly. So I do still feel like America is exceptional in those ways.
Yeah, I think about that when we talk about Civil War a lot. It's like, yeah, well, by the way, there were a large swath of people fighting to end that, and they were against it from the start. And yeah, like I say, that's just some stuff that people did. I don't think that doesn't encapsulate what we're about.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and this is we still have at this point, I don't know if it'll stay that way. We still have, at least on our nation's currency, in God we trust. I hope it always stays that way. I don't know if it will. I think it's unlikely. And it's not just a mere statement. It needs to really be something that our country re-examines, takes to heart, and we need to get back to really believing that. And why do I say all this? Psalm 33, starting in verse 12, it says it like this. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance. The Lord looketh from heaven, he beholdeth all the sons of men. From the place of his habitation he looketh upon all the inhabitants of the earth. He fashioneth their hearts alike. He considereth all their works. There is no king saved by the multitude of an host. A mighty man is not delivered by much strength. And horse is a vain thing for safety, neither shall he deliver any by his great strength. I just want to pause here for a second. This is going to be kind of a comical pause here. I recently heard a story about an entire family that took this verse out of context and said, the Bible says here, the horse is a vain thing, and therefore no Christian should own a horse. And I honestly don't know if this story, it was actually like coming from a place of humor. It's like the family just, or maybe the dad of the family just didn't like horses, and he just kind of used it. And maybe the rest of the family grew up thinking he was actually serious when he wasn't. I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt. At worst, this guy was actually serious and thought the Bible was saying Christians should not own horses. And I only say this because I never heard of that before. I was so taken aback by it that I just want to debunk that right here.
So he must have worked out a lot, because the Bible says bodily exercise profits a little.
Yeah, it does profit.
Yeah.
It profits little, but it does profit. And a lot of people treat it like it doesn't profit anything, right? Yeah.
So he must have been like, I got to adhere to this.
Also, I mean, within the same verse, the point you're bringing up, it says, or it's the verse before that, a mighty man is not delivered by much strength. Oh, don't focus on strength.
Uh-oh.
That's wrong for Christians. If you can open that pickle jar, shame on you. You should have to go to the lost to open that pickle jar. No, yeah, it's kind of comical. I hope that's not taking away from what I'm trying to drive at here, but it just popped into my head. I thought that was funny, and if you believe this, I at least encourage you to pray about it and read your Bible a little bit for more context there.
Yeah.
Get some counseling on that.
Wrap your head around that a little bit tighter.
Yeah. It goes on to say, behold, the eye of the Lord is upon them that fear him, upon them that hope in his mercy. Again, when it talks about the fear of the Lord, it's talking about a reverence. We should respect the Lord. It's something that comes out of love, not out of duty. To deliver their soul from death and to keep them alive in famine. Our soul waiteth for the Lord. He is our help and our shield. For our heart shall rejoice in him, because we have trusted in his holy name. Let thy mercy, O Lord, be upon us, according as we hope in thee. I feel like, and maybe there is documentation of this, and I'm just not aware of it, but I feel like without knowing that's been documented, I feel like that is where we got the idea of "in God we trust" on our nation's currency, is that section of scripture right there. Ultimately, what do I view America as? I view it as there was a time in our world history where essentially the last beacon of the gospel of Christ was being snuffed out in Europe and heavily tyrannized. And then God, in his providential will and in his protection and guidance, he guided people to a new world where they could start America and continue being a bastion of hope, the hope of Christ, the hope of the gospel, to share the good news without threat of tyranny or infringing upon our freedoms. And that to me is the most important thing in all the world, to be able to give the gospel out without fear of death, at least at this point, right? Like you alluded to earlier. And that is what makes America still great today. And it will only continue to be great as we acknowledge that truth, right? That we are here to bring the gospel to a lost and dying world. Now, thankfully, I will say this. I think there's a lot of other places in the world that are shining brighter for the gospel than they used to, namely the Philippines. I don't know if you know this, Dan, but they're actually sending missionaries from the Philippines to America. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, that's the way the Philippines view our country, is that it's a mission field. Now, I don't know, you could talk about there's a lot of other countries that really do need the gospel, but I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I do think we need help. We need revival in spirit. And I don't necessarily mean revival in the way it's used in a lot of contexts, but I mean revival begins in the revival is not a meeting. It should be a daily thing in a Christian's life. And really it's when Christians are doing this daily in agreement together in one place, that's where people typically recognize and say there's a revival happening.
I used to have this friend named Tom, and he moved to the other side of the state, but he was kind of I'd say a mild-mannered, sort of a soft-spoken guy. And one day we were at a gathering, some kind of church picnic or something. I don't know what it was, but anyway, he just kind of, because we were talking about this revival that was coming up or whatever, and he didn't say much, but what he did say was so profound. He goes, "It always seemed weird to me that you could schedule a revival."
Yeah. We're going to meet at this place, and Holy Spirit's going to show up because we told him to. And
I thought it was funny, and I was like, why didn't we schedule it sooner?
Why don't we schedule for every day?
I know, we should have been
if that's
scheduling
all
it
it
all
is, then yeah.
Why didn't we schedule this sooner?
That's a good point.
It was so funny coming from him too, because he was always like talking like this. Yeah, why didn't we just schedule this? It always seemed weird to me that you could schedule a revival. But I guess you had to know him. But
Yeah,
anyway.
no, that's great. That's good delivery. Yeah, I mean, I guess really to leave this off on a good note here, 2 Corinthians 3:17 says, "Now this the Lord is that Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty." Um, we are a nation of liberty, and there's no other nation like it in the world. Praise God for that. Glory be to God for everything that we've gotten from our country and the opportunities we have here. Let us be good stewards while we still have them. They talk about, as far as exercising with your muscles, you got to use it or lose it. I think in the same way, freedom and liberty is a muscle that, especially, really all of America, but especially us as Christians, we need to use it or we lose it. Use your freedom to advance the gospel of Christ, bring God the glory. That's what it's all about. America is only here because the Spirit of the Lord was here. And where is the Spirit of the Lord? Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in His name. He is in the midst of them. And as long as we are continuing to gather together in His name as a country, the Spirit of the Lord will be here, and the Spirit of liberty will never leave America. But the second we don't, we neglect to meet together in the name of the Lord, that is where liberty leaves. So that is my prayer for you, the listener, and for all of us as a country today, that we would continue to seek the Lord, and that we would be blessed, and that we would have the Spirit of the Lord and the liberty He brings. Thank you for listening to the Life and Faith podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review on your favorite platform, and sharing it with friends and family. Your support helps us continue spreading the gospel of faith, hope, and love. Connect with us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many others to stay updated on our latest episodes. See the link in the show notes for all our social media channels. And until next time, it is our hope you'll commit yourself to an even deeper life and faith.